Is Walter supposed to be with us tonight?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Well, we have just a few minutes, and normally Walter's early. That's why I ask.
So the meeting process and policies, Dr. Hetherington, you can kind of pass that off to me and I can kind of go through that document that I usually go through.
Okay, great.
If you just want to introduce the commission first, and then I can kind of go through that whole document.
Sounds good. I was planning to do that, but I'm glad you confirmed.
Yeah.
And then we still have 3 people signed up?
Yes.
Okay.
If they all join us.
Yeah.
If they all join us.
And then right from there, we'll go to Professor Priscilli.
Yes.
So we have a quorum. So at 6, we're going to start with whomever we have.
As we don't have anyone testifying as to maps this evening, I certainly could start off the meeting with kind of that big, long thing that I usually read about the rules and policies at first, and then we could kind of just go into the introduction of the commission and then start right in if you'd like, or I can just kind of welcome people, pass it to you, and then go through all of that gobbledygook policies and procedures if you'd like.
All right. I was just thinking of starting off with welcoming people, going into the introductions, and then passing it on to you.
Perfect.
Okay. You know, that red part is not exactly correct because Professor Priscilli will close the meeting tonight, because it says the meeting will conclude after the last speaker's testimony is complete.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, that's something that one of the things that we had in there left over, just because we want people to realize that there's no guarantee of how long a meeting will go, because people might join at 7:30 and say, well, I wanted to speak, but the time would have transpired. So
okay.
Keep as is.
Who was that?
That was John. Yeah, John, that's fine. Leave it like this for now. Actually, John, why don't you just go ahead and take out the meeting will conclude after the last speaker's testimony is complete for this meeting.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. And I think we are ready to begin. Everybody ready?
Yep. I do not have any kind of message from Walter as of right now.
Or Kim or Cheryl?
Nope.
Okay. Well, hopefully they'll be joining us shortly. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and would like to welcome everyone to round 2 of public meetings of the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission. And I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who's here and appreciate your time. And we're looking forward to your input. I'd like to begin by asking the members of the commission to introduce themselves. I'll begin by letting you know that I am Dr. Kate Hetherington. I am president of Howard Community College, and I reside in Howard County. And Judge Williams, if you would go next, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Harrington. I'm Alex Williams. I'm co-chair also, along with Walter Olson and Dr. Hetherington, and I reside in Prince George's County. I'm a retired judge.
All right, thank you. I'm sure Walter Olson will be joining us shortly, but let's go on to the members of the committee. Jay Amin is not here yet, but he should be here. He's expected to be here. But I'll move on to Cheryl Brooks and ask her to introduce herself.
Good evening. I'm Cheryl Brooks. I'm a principal in a Baltimore County school, and I'm a resident of Baltimore County.
All right. Thank you. Good to see you. And Mary?
Hello, I'm Mary Clausen. I'm a retired federal employee and I reside in Anne Arundel County.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Cummings. I am a resident of the Eastern Shore, currently Dorchester County, where I am employed by the Circuit Court for Dorchester County, specializing in land records and licensing.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Fussfield. I reside in Montgomery County. I'm a communications manager for a government contractor.
Thank you. William?
Good evening. My name is William Thomas. I'm a senior principal systems engineer for the Department of Defense, and I live in Baltimore City.
All right, thank you. And we'll go back to our co-chair, Walter.
Thanks, and sorry for the tech problem. My name is Walter Olson. I live in Frederick County. I'm a fellow with the think tank in DC.
All right, thank you. And we'll ask Jay to introduce himself as he comes on board. All right, we're going to move on to the agenda, and we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the meeting processes and policies. And I'm going to ask Kristen Fleckenstein from the Department of Planning to guide us through that. Kristen?
Hi, good evening, and welcome to the first public meeting of round 2 of the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission. This meeting is being recorded. As we begin, there are a few matters we'd like to share as to the rules and policies for this evening's meeting, as well as some tips about the platform that will assist our speakers in understanding how Zoom works better. This meeting offers Spanish interpretation. To listen in Spanish, you will note that there is a box on the Zoom control panel, either at the bottom or the top of your screen for interpretation. Please click on that box and select Spanish. We also ask that speakers presenting tonight think about that and speak slowly and clearly. There will be a 3-minute allotment for our speakers so that everyone who wants to speak may speak. When there's 20 seconds left of your speaking time, a screen share will come on with the countdown timer. Inappropriate speaking, attire, behavior, or background will result in removal from the meeting without the ability to rejoin. Anyone registering after 6 p.m. last night should ask to join in as a speaker in the chat section, as your name will not be on the list of pre-registered speakers that we'll call from. However, you will not be able to share your screen or any maps, as any maps must be submitted 24 hours prior to a meeting. If you did not register to speak but want to, you can request to do so in a message to the panelists via the chat speaker. There is a control bar at the bottom of your screen. Select the chat box and then send a message to panelists indicating your name and the county in which you reside. However, you should not use the raised hand option to request to speak. You must use the chat feature. But please also make sure that your name is listed properly. If not, we will not be able to call you as to how you have registered for us to call you as a speaker. Please note that the participants and attendee list is not public, as several people join with their phone numbers, and to protect their privacy, we do not make that public. The pre-registered speakers will go first, and then those who register through the chat box will then go second. Speakers providing testimony should also be aware that you will be made a panelist when it's your turn to speak, which will enable you to unmute and turn on your camera. There might be a short delay. Don't worry about that. It's how it works. You will get a message saying the host would like to promote you as a panelist. You need to accept that button and then join as a panelist. We'll wait about 5 to 10 seconds for you to join, and if not, we'll have to move on to the next speaker. If a speaker doesn't join, then if they are not on the call or in the meeting, and when we call them, we'll simply come back to them at the end. When you're finished speaking, you then will be moved back to an attendee. You might see a spinning wheel or a message that you're leaving the meeting. Don't worry, you're not being kicked out of the meeting. You're simply being moved back to an attendee. We know this is a lot of information, but want to assist you in better understanding how this meeting is going to work so it can run as smoothly as possible. This evening, we do not have an abundance of speakers, and while we did receive multiple map submissions, most people submitted written testimony rather than requesting to speak during this evening's meeting. So this evening, it does not appear that we will have any map presentations from public submissions. So this meeting will go a bit more quickly than usual. With that, I would like to introduce you to the host for this evening's meeting, Dr. Kate Hetherington, back again, who will handle the rest of the meeting for you. Dr. Hetherington?
Thank you, Kristen. I believe we had 3 people who were signed up. I don't know if that's still the same situation.
We do have 3 people. We have one that has signed up in the chat feature. As of right now, our first speaker, Vantasha Sims, has not joined the meeting. That brings us to Zulika Bazemore from Baltimore City. Are you ready to hear from Ms. Bazemore?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Ms. Bazemore?
Zulika, I am moving you to a panelist. You'll just need to unmute and turn your start your video.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, wait a minute. I have you on. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Bazemore.
I don't know why I'm not hearing everyone.
Oh.
Okay. I just want to say that let me see. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hopefully you can hear us.
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay.
All right, good. We're ready to go.
All
All right,
you.
go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. Actually, I really did not prepare a testimony. I will say that some of, I still have the same stance that I had during the first rounds, because I think it's so important that that we become as one, where Baltimore City needs to become as one, because we're so scattered out in terms of the mapping. And I think that's why we still have a one system party here in Baltimore City. And I think
Ms. Bazemore, if you could unmute yourself, please.
giving independents the opportunity even to vote in an election where it's not just party driven. But I think if we at least close the gaps and look at Baltimore as one, and bring us closer together, where in each district, you would have not just a whole district made up of Democrats, but expanding that district where it includes some independents and Republicans. After being on the ground of Baltimore, doing a lot of things when it comes to grassroots, I get to talk to hundreds of people on a weekly basis. And people right now are so sick and tired of being sick and tired, where they just want to look at a candidate and know that that candidate is about their doing some work to address the issues and actually getting some solutions put forth. So they're not looking at, a lot of them are just not looking at party. They're looking at individuals' character, their experience, but their heart for the city and for the people.
Ms. Bazemore, is that the end of your testimony?
That's it. You
Okay.
guys could go from there, but I would hope that we really are pushing that Baltimore City begin to close that gap when it comes to mapping, where we have a more diversity when it comes to those districts, and instead of them being fully red or fully blue, where we can bring more people together from each one of those parties so we can get some things done in Baltimore.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Bazemore. We, as you know, round one we had 8 public hearings listening to testimony from folks about what they wanted to see. And so round 2, we're really interested in seeing what the map should look like. So based on what you told us, you have an opportunity to submit drawings of the maps, and you may want to stay tuned for the rest of this presentation because we have Professor Priscilli that will give us some guidance. So might be worthwhile just to stay on and listen, and perhaps once you hear some guidance from him, that might help you with, and anyone else who's listening, with submissions. We really want to see your submissions. We've received some, but we're really interested in receiving more. So thank you, Ms. Bazemore, for your testimony tonight. All right, Kristen.
We have Reuben Collins. Actually, the next signed up speaker is Abraham Diallo from Prince George's County. Abraham is not on the meeting yet, so we're going to move to our chat request speaker, Reuben Collins. Reuben, you are being promoted to a panelist. You will need to unmute and start your screen.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Collins, welcome.
I was dealing with some technical difficulties there. I couldn't see myself. I could see you, but I couldn't see myself. But thank you. Hello, everyone. I see my good friend, Judge Alex Williams. It's always a pleasure seeing you, sir. My comments, very brief. My title is President of the Board of County Commissioners for Charles County. I'd ask that the commission, in looking at maps based on the 2020 census, consider the demographics of Charles County. Charles County, according to the census, it was the 3rd fastest growing county in the state of Maryland. It is now also a majority African-American population now. What I would ask that this commission consider is looking at amplifying potential opportunities for minority representation in Charles County. Upon completion of the 2010 census, one proposed map for redistricting included the creation of an additional senatorial seat that would be aligned with Southern Prince George's County and the Waldorf area, and then that would add an additional senator to Charles County. And I'm asking that as a commission that you strongly look at any opportunities to expand the potential voting power for the minority population, but most specifically as it relates to the jurisdiction Charles County. And so I just wanted to share that and ask that the commission consider that in your findings. And I look forward to hearing the presentations as you move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And after hearing some of the discussion later tonight, again, you are welcome to submit your version of what you'd like that map to look like, and we would love to see that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kristen, who else do we have this evening?
So Vantasha Sims has not yet joined. Abraham Diallo has not joined. We've not had any additional requests.
All right.
That's it for tonight.
All right. Well, we have 3 more hearings coming up. So people will have, if you're listening and maybe a little shy about submitting maps, maybe after our discussion that will soon follow, you'll feel inclined to take a look at the area that you have a particular interest in and submit your suggestions for maps. We really do welcome them.
And Dr. Hetherington, we did receive 10 maps to date. I believe that 8 of them have already been processed, meaning that we put them into PDF format and zip the files if they've submitted them through Maptitude. They are posted on the website at redistricting.maryland.gov. If you go to the page that discusses the portal where it says the portal is live, you click on that box. It provides you some information on the map submission process. And underneath there, you'll see a menu item that says submitted maps. And so if you just simply click on that, you will be able to, it says citizen plan submissions. And if you click on citizen plan submissions, you will be able to pull up a PDF of all 9 of the files, 9 of the 10 files that have already been placed, the PDFs as well as the files if you wanted to pull it up in other mapping software.
All right, very good. Thank you for that information. I think at this point, with no additional speakers, we're ready to move on to presentation by Professor Nathan Priscilli. He is professor of law at Stanford Law School, the James B. McClatchy Professor of Law, and he is assisting members of this commission in the process and has been very informative, and like a good teacher, he explains things clearly that you can understand them. So with that, Professor Priscilli, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen. I can do several things tonight, and thank you to the co-chairs of the commission for letting me talk tonight. I have sent to the commission example districts of what can be done if for Western Maryland, for Eastern Maryland, and for the largest counties that could contain more than one district. In addition, I've sent along just informative maps about the racial composition of the precincts, which is important for compliance with the Voting Rights Act, as well as understanding where different communities lie. I can take this, as we've discussed before, I think the greatest use of our time when we actually have it, is to physically draw the maps together and to do that. So we could jump in and start doing that together like we were doing last time, or I can go over some of the maps that I sent to you that illustrate the different options, I think, for Eastern Maryland, Western Shore, and the big cities. What would you like, what would be most productive from your perspective?
I'd like to hear from the members of the commission about their preference.
I'd like to go over the maps that you developed and everyone else can see them as well.
Okay.
That's an idea of options, if that's okay.
That sounds good to me.
Mary, can you nod your head? William?
I agree. I've made comments on many of the maps, and I have some questions. So I think that's very good. I support Cheryl.
Great.
All right. So we have William also agreeing, and Kim's nodding her head. Yes. Walter, Jonathan, I think we have total agreement. All right, Professor.
All right. I need to be able to share my screen. So whoever controls that, has that power, please give it to me. There we go. Can you see my screen? This is a Microsoft Word document.
Yes.
All right, so I'll start with the Eastern Shore districts and then options. And I think what I'll do is I'll do Eastern Shore, then Western Maryland, then each of the major cities. Now, I want to be clear, that's something that should be obvious, which is that these are incomplete maps. These are individual districts. You cannot, just take one from column A and one from column B, and then everything's going to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, right? So these maps illustrate the kind of decision points for these various regions, as well as the consequences of honoring and trying to fit within each populous county, which is to say a county that can support one district, what the consequences of that are. I'm also happy to go over some of the public submissions to give you a sense of how other people have started to draw these congressional maps, just to kind of get the exercises going.
Yeah, that would be very helpful as well.
All right, so let me just show, you see on the screen right now, this, which would be a kind of we talked about this last time, a district that respects the Chesapeake Bay, goes up in the same way that the current version of this district does, goes up, but unites Hartford and then goes into Baltimore. Just to be clear, every district that I'm showing you right now is near perfect population equality, right? So it's certainly less than 1% deviation. So this is what you could draw. I want to emphasize though that the final breaks, if you look at, for instance, in this map, the break in Baltimore, that can be done any number of ways. You could throw it up on the top. You could have it go down farther south. But that's the amount of population that you would need from Baltimore in order for it to be a perfect population district. And so I did not in the split counties here, I don't want to pretend that this is like the way, if even in my heart of hearts, how I would draw it, but just to give you a sense of what would need to be done. So that's one option. Another option is where—
Professor Priscilli, just for the audience, you may want to just talk about that number that you have to have, the 772. Just the audience may not be aware of that.
Yes, right. So I can get the exact number up on my screen, which but roughly 772,000 people per district is what's required under one person, one vote. And I think that we should be able to, with some ease, draw districts that hit exactly that number plus or minus one person. Of course, you're allowed to depart from perfect population equality, but when you do so for congressional districts, it does invite possible legal challenges. So this is the example of the type of district we were talking about last time that would respect the Chesapeake Bay. Here is a different version. If you take Hartford, you'll notice we basically replaced Hartford in the slice of Baltimore that was in with the Eastern Shore and replaced it with Calvert, St. Mary's, and part of Charles County. This district, this envisions, obviously then this part of Charles would be united with Prince George's County in some other kind of district. But notice that this does not breach Anne Arundel County at all, but you could, in a sense, swap out parts of this so that Anne Arundel County would go into this district. But again, it keeps most of the Eastern Shore, up through Cecil together and then adds those. Here is another version, which instead of keeping Anne Arundel whole, keeps Charles County whole. Again, not going into Hartford, but going all the way up to Cecil and then going St. Mary's, Calvert, and Anne Arundel County, right? Now, as we talked about last time, there is no bridge or way of transportation other than boats or swimming between these parts of the district. That has historically, there was a time, though not recently, when the congressional districts did do that. Ordinarily, when I draw districts, I would do it where it would connect by a land bridge here. But I think water contiguity, at least for the congressional plan, might be allowed. There's case law with respect to the state legislative plan where you might that I think it would be legally problematic to cross for the state Senate or state House lines to cross the Chesapeake. Here is one where we do cross at the Anne Arundel crossing at the bridge, right? Again, keeping Hartford out, but adding in that population to the Eastern Shore. And then here is one that one of the commissioners asked me to demonstrate, which is what happens if you split Cecil, if you wanted to keep these southern Maryland counties whole, what would that mean up here? And the answer is not only would you shed Hartford from that original district, but you would also split Cecil right around here, which would really be, the kind of almost true Eastern Shore, literally the water is what would be followed. But that would keep Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's in this giant district like that. I can pause for a second on the Eastern Shore district so I can go right into the Western Maryland districts as you wish.
How about if we hear any comments from the commissioners? I think, Mary, you had mentioned you had some questions. I don't know if it was about this particular map or any of the other commissioners. All right, I'm not hearing any comments, so let's proceed.
All right, so now we're starting in the corners here. So I'm doing two regions and then I'm doing the individual counties. So the commission last time seemed attracted to the idea of going with these 5 counties together all the way to Carroll County. I will say that although most of the plans I'm going to show you do that, I've added one that doesn't, just because one thing you should know is by adding Carroll County to the Western Maryland districts, it does essentially put a roof on the plan, right? Where then you have to decide whether you're going to go into Baltimore, whether you go into Montgomery with this district, as well as this will mean that all the Baltimore districts, if there is one that's crossing from Baltimore, will go south or east into Hartford. All right, so this is a nice compact district that makes the decision to go with those 5 counties plus part of Howard County. Here, instead of going into Howard, it goes into Montgomery. Again, don't worry about the actual shape of the incursion into these split counties, but this had to do, there was some sort of messages from the commission about the sort of agricultural areas that are here that might be of use, or might be of interest. This is, as I mentioned before, one other option that goes all the way to Western Baltimore, including Carroll County, and is just sort of rectangular in a lot of respects. This is the example that I was mentioning where you don't need to go into Carroll County. You could go into Montgomery County and get the population that way. One advantage of this is that then what remains is almost a perfect district inside Montgomery County. And so it shares that population. But look, it really depends on, and I felt that the commission might have felt strongly that Carroll County is more aligned with Frederick than maybe parts of Montgomery. But it also, how you deal with Baltimore County then has an impact on how, what happens in Howard and Carroll and the like. Why don't I stop there? And if not, I'll go into the major cities, the major counties, really.
Do we have any comments or questions from the members of the commission? Seeing none.
Okay. Let me start with Baltimore County. And I did not do Baltimore City. Well, I did a little bit, but I want to just show you what I tried to do is I showed district pairings between a district that is fully contained within one of the populous counties, and then what the next district might look like. So here is an example of a district that would be wholly within Baltimore County. And then Baltimore County is of course split because it has too many people. And then this is a district that would have, Baltimore City whole plus little pieces of Anne Arundel and Baltimore County, right? So the Baltimore County line goes down that way. And so that's where it makes up for the population. Here is something similar to what I was showing before, where instead of the district that would be on the Eastern Shore going up, and I had a kind of moon-shaped incursion here. I know there was some discussion by the commission that maybe the southern part of Baltimore County is more aligned with the southern part of Hartford. And so you could have the Eastern Shore district come up here. But again, just so we're clear, right, this is the portion of Baltimore County that would house an entire district. So here is another district where it's similar to the first district for Baltimore County, but then the second district could go up. And as I was saying before, how you deal with Carroll County is in part a function of how you think Baltimore County should be split, if at all. And so here is a district that is entirely within Baltimore County. And then the second district unites Carroll with Howard, and then parts of Baltimore and Anne Arundel. Similarly, I showed you this on the previous map, which is that you could have Baltimore County, an entire district basically in here, and then a district that goes from Western Maryland all the way into Baltimore County. So that's Baltimore County. Let me talk about Montgomery County. One of the interesting questions I think the commission may need to decide is sort of whether to respect this boundary between Montgomery County and Prince George's County. One of the reasons that the race maps that I've sent you is useful is so you can see the patterns of demographic concentrations by precinct. And so the Latino population, sort of lives in sort of this line crossing the border there. But assuming the residuum from Montgomery after you put an entire district in Montgomery County goes south, then that means splitting Prince George's County, and Prince George's County will not have its own district. Because it'll basically be most of a lot of the population will be here. Well, it depends what you would do in Charles County, but this is basically what a Montgomery plus Prince George's County district would look like. Here again, ignore the fact that this looks like a cat that's being held up. We can smooth out the district lines, but if you did a southern Montgomery County district, you could actually draw a district that way. You have to have some route through here for the Western Maryland district, but you could join parts of Carroll with this is sort of a Howard County based district. Again, instead of doing the district that would bridge Montgomery County and Prince George's County, like the first map, you could do parts of Montgomery, parts of Prince George's, and then all of Howard County in one district. Again, in addition to what Montgomery County has. Same idea here, just saying that Howard plus parts of Anne Arundel plus parts of Montgomery. And notice the way that I did this. This district is cut this way, which might not be the right sort of. If you know the neighborhoods in Montgomery County, it's probably not the way. When you think of like the inner DC suburbs right here, probably goes out more vertically. But again, I just wanted to show you what a compact district might look like. And I think this is the final one for Montgomery County, which was again that Western Maryland kind of district where you have all of Montgomery County could be in one district here. This part of Montgomery County then forms a district with Western Maryland, and then you have a little bit left over for what would be probably a Carroll, Howard, Montgomery County, maybe a little Anne Arundel district, or maybe parts of Baltimore. Finally, we talk about Prince George's County. Prince George's County, it's interesting, as might have been suggested from the first set of maps, Prince George's County districts will be affected, of course, by what you do in Montgomery County, but also what you do in the Eastern Shore and where Charles County is going to be. Because if Charles County is essentially on its own, not united with any of the counties to its east, then it will, of course, have to split Prince George's County. And so here is an example sort of like what that first map is. Here would be a full district in Prince George's County with a crossover district between Prince George's and Montgomery County. Here's one where you keep the district all within Prince George's County, and you just have an Anne Arundel plus parts of Prince George's County district. I don't think it gets all of Anne Arundel, but gets most of it. Here's one where this is what I'm talking about with Charles County, where if you locate the district, if you're going to include one wholly within Prince George's, then you have a lot of population you have to contend with. And so the Southern Maryland district that includes Charles, parts of Prince George, a lot of Anne Arundel County, and Calvert and St. Mary's. So those are some options. I happy to talk individually about them, or we could even just start, drawing a map today comparable to what we did before, but at your disposal.
Since we have a lot of work to do and a little bit of time to do it, I'm inclined, and I'll ask the commission if you agree, that we get started on going with the congressional maps, because remember, we still have the legislative maps to do. And if we could spend some time, we can always refine it. But if we spend some time tonight discussing, based on our previous conversations, based on the 8 hearings that we've had, what we heard tonight as well, that we start to take a look at what we have and at least get something started. Does anyone have any concerns if we begin in that direction?
Oh, I don't have any concerns. I want to ask Professor a question about Prince George's. That's such a difficult jurisdiction because it probably has more African Americans there than any other place. And I am a little concerned about packing.
Yeah.
And when you packed all of the African Americans in one jurisdiction, then you prevent an opportunity for having influence in another jurisdiction. So the only question in my mind, of course, and we can talk about it later, is that where do you get the remaining, or where does Prince George's shed its numbers and which counties or so forth? Well, you've given us several options from that standpoint, and I will certainly say right now, I'm still opposed to crossing the Bay Bridge. I really have problems. I think, again, Southern Maryland, to me, should be hooked up with the Southern Prince George's County or portions of Prince George's County. That's my view. And Anne Arundel, the parts of Anne Arundel. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think that Anne Arundel County has been really used as a whipping boy the past few years. Everybody takes a little of Anne Arundel County, and I just don't think that's right. Well, that's just my my view. I heard some of the comments from some of the citizens that they don't want to be in 4 different districts. And I think that makes a lot of sense, but it's just some general observations that I'm making.
Wonderful. So let me talk about each one of those. I sympathize with what you're saying about packing, and let me just show you, right, these are the demographics with the adjusted prisoner data of Prince George's County. So you'll notice here, just if this district, this new, if we just chose Prince George's County, then you're talking about 60% Black and roughly 18% Latino and only 12.8% white, non-Hispanic white. And so, so let me speak as a lawyer first, and then as a kind of redistricting person, which is that under the Voting Rights Act, right, you can dilute the minority vote in several ways. One of them is cracking, and sort of where you break up the minority community into too many parts. The other is packing, as you suggest. And so we will make sure, assuming, of course, that there is a sufficient racial polarization in the other ingredients for a voting rights claim, right? This concern about packing is one that's legally cognizable. What it means, generally speaking, is that there will be at least two districts where African Americans have an equal opportunity to elect their candidate of choice, right? And so we will make sure that is honored by this plan. That doesn't mean that they have to be over 50%, because in areas like Prince George's County and in much of Baltimore, there's not, it's not as polarized as other parts of Maryland. And so you can do, you could have effective Black plurality districts in the 40% range or so. And I can talk more about that, about the racial polarization analysis that we've done. But you are right. But this is where the political subdivision requirement kind of comes up against these concerns about packing that you're expressing, right? So if you draw a district that unites all of Baltimore City, right, that is also going to be a heavily African-American district, right, here in Prince George's. So then what does one do about that? The question is to what extent do you want to keep the districts for the populous counties, the ones that can sustain more than one district, at least one district? How much do you want to sort of keep it within the confines of that county? So any district you draw in Prince George's County that's reasonably compact is going to be, substantially majority African American, right? Unless you do some fancy footwork, certainly majority minority. And so then the question is, do you want to then break Prince George's up into more parts so that it doesn't have one district? Some of the public submissions have done that. But then you also have to think about, when you were talking about Anne Arundel, right? That's part of one of the consequences of this, which is that if Prince George's County is divided up in order to prevent packing, that will also likely lead to division in Anne Arundel County. Because once you draw a district, let's say half of a district here, it's got to find population somewhere. And Anne Arundel is the one that is the most populous county that would be around here. So like I said in the demonstrations, you could divide up Prince George's County where you have one district that goes into Montgomery, one district goes into Anne Arundel, one district that also joins with Southern Maryland. But if you're respecting the Chesapeake Bay, right, Anne Arundel is probably going, either Anne Arundel or Prince George's County will be substantially divided, just because that's the way the math works, right? Because if you look, if you take these three counties, then you're going to split Anne Arundel, or you could take these three counties and split Prince George's, and then Anne Arundel in theory could be whole. So that was a long answer to your question, but I think that the concerns about packing are well-founded, and something we should think about. It's particularly true in the legislative map too, of course.
And if I could jump in on a closely related point, I also question the principle, if it is a principle, of giving each of the three largest counties a district completely contained within their borders, because I think it's, if we do that, if we promise that to Montgomery, Prince George's, and Baltimore, the smaller counties are going to find themselves kind of squeezed and in a vise. Professor Priscilli just described part of what would happen to Anne Arundel, but notice that in the Baltimore County maps, if there is to be one district entirely contained within that horseshoe-shaped county, then Baltimore City almost has to spill out and take a substantial chunk of Anne Arundel itself. So you've already got two chunks being taken out of Anne Arundel. The Eastern Shore is forced to take Hartford, whether it wants to or not, under these county unit plans. Meanwhile, Anne Arundel is going to be asked to make up probably some difference in the west toward Howard County. So we find ourselves again demoting the interests of smaller counties. And by that, I mean even places as big as Baltimore City, because it may not make the most sense for Baltimore City's district to be filled out from northern Anne Arundel. It might make more sense, the connections between, commuting populations and populations that live on both sides of the line might make more sense in a west or a north or an east direction instead of pushing them down to Glen Burnie.
Okay, other comments? Mary?
Yes, I think that there are a couple pivotal counties that have had a lot of growth that are starting to make a difference here. And Charles County is one of those. It no longer is just a rural county. It definitely has a significant urban population. I think the difference between urban and the urban-suburban high density needs to be considered when we put the interest of people together. I favor the first of the Eastern Shore maps that includes Harford County and part of Baltimore County, as it might be tweaked somewhat, but I am not in favor of extending the Eastern Shore and mixing their interest with Southern Maryland, which is growing at a much different rate than the Eastern Shore and has a different growth pattern. I think that's something to be considered as well. Thanks.
Other comments from the commissioners? William, are you want to say something?
I think, yes, I was going to comment on Walter's suggestion about, his statement about splitting Anne Arundel up into so many different districts, but that's currently what has happened to Baltimore City, and I don't want that to happen to Anne Arundel, but at the same time, I don't want Baltimore City to be split up into 4 districts that we're already split up into now. So I think it's going to take some what's the word that Professor mentioned earlier? Some footwork or some groundwork to really sort of kind of try to make as much of this as have it make as much sense as possible, because it's the way it's currently done is not going to work. But some of the potential maps we've laid out, you know, has too many counties being split up too many different ways, and I don't think anybody will ever really be able to get anything done, you know, with how things are currently going right now.
Cheryl, Kim, Jonathan?
I mean, I guess we would have to, I don't want to say play with it more, but in terms of looking at northern Baltimore County, potentially, or western Baltimore County and part of Carroll, thinking of northern Baltimore County with Hartford, but depends on how much it would be. I'd have to look at the numbers to see if that made sense, but it depends on where we draw the line. I mean, if we're not going across water, if we are. But I do think that some of Baltimore City would be combined with Baltimore County in many aspects. And I do think that there are some communities of interest that cross the city line into northern Anne Arundel. So I need to go back to the maps he showed us, you know, just to see what the groups look like in order to see what makes sense.
Kim or Jonathan, any comments?
Nothing just yet.
All right, Jonathan?
Yeah, just taking it all in right now and sort of doing math in my head.
All right. Well, the good thing with Professor Priscilli guiding us, I think you can do some of that math for us. I think one of the things that we had talked about doing is establishing principles or values. And, you know, by having this discussion, we really are starting to say what's the most important thing. And, you know, if I go back to the executive order, it talked about starting at the northwest corner of the state. And I wonder if it might be worthwhile just to get started on that part of the state and see if we can get some consensus, because as Dr. Priscilli talked to us at the beginning, it's not as though you can pick one from column A and one from column B. They do have to mesh, and there has to be some flexibility. If not, it's just not going to work. So if that's all right with you, if we start to look at the northwest corner of the state and say, okay, you know, this is a pass at that part and what's acceptable for us, and then maybe move on to, Professor, I guess next would be, we could do maybe the Eastern Shore and get some consensus on that. If we can get to those two parts, because they take up big chunks of the state, and then work in towards the middle, I think we might make some progress tonight, and then we can let it percolate, because we still have many hearings to do, but at least we can start to begin. So if that's all right with you, Professor, maybe we start with the northwest part of the state first, and then go to the Eastern Shore.
Certainly. One thing I just realized, as folks were talking about how divided the interior counties are, sometimes that is going to happen, and that will happen actually with our approach here, starting from the outside working in, which is that you kind of paint yourself into a corner. So often you will end up with the interior counties to be chopped up because they're providing population for the ones on the outside. But you know what, right now I think we're just trying to get a base map and then go from there, and then we'll see. That's why I wanted to at least alert you to the issue about, once you, like, adding Carroll County to the northwest here is a decision with implications, because it borders Baltimore. It then either, of course, the remainder of this district would have to come into Baltimore a little bit, but then it basically pushes everything south here. So anyway, let's draw this district, which I think there was certainly consensus that these four counties would be together. I don't know what numbering you would like me to use. I'm going to call this 1 for now.
That's fine.
But we can change it. And so now it needs 32% of a district, right? And so we need to find basically 250,000 people. We can provide all of that in Montgomery County, or we can add Carroll and then add pieces of either, well, of any of these other counties. So I don't know how you would like to progress here because
Well, based on previous conversations, we had talked about adding Carroll.
okay.
So should we try a different way? Should we go down and try Montgomery?
Well, I can show you what that looks like, right? So that I tried to do all the possibilities here. Right. So that if you don't do Carroll, right, then you just go and I could smooth this out, of course, but Frederick, and then you go into Montgomery. So that's what that looks like. And then if you do Carroll, right, you can do all Carroll plus parts of Baltimore, or Carroll plus parts of Montgomery County, or Carroll parts of Howard. So there's no right way to do this, right? This is about, deciding on the trade-offs and what you sort of think is the right answer here about how to join these counties together.
From what I heard before, it sounded like people were saying, put Carroll in with the western part, and then maybe look at the top of Montgomery, because we have too many people in that one district. You're going to have to give up somewhere. And then I think, Walter, you had mentioned something about the northern part, or that northwestern part of Montgomery County seems to be in line with the Frederick County.
Just to reiterate what I said last time, I do think that Carroll County is better placed with Western Maryland. I think there's much more of a community of interest. Of the other options, I don't think that Northern Baltimore County works as well. And part of the reason is that the transportation issue begins to be more serious. It's just harder to reach. You need the beltway to get up into those areas. The rest of the district makes more sense expanding into Northern Montgomery or Western Howard as far as transportation connections. I agree that Northern Baltimore is rural and has that kind of community of interest, but my view was that Western Howard was a good answer. Northernmost Montgomery was also a good answer. And I thought that we should be flexible depending on what worked for other parts of the map. Either of those options would, I think be, very plausible.
I'd like to speak in favor of adding Carroll as the next piece to District 1 as we have it. And then I actually prefer the Northern Montgomery as the add-in, again, because they have excess population, not unlike Baltimore's County, but it is a more compact solution than stringing further east across, right below the Pennsylvania border. So of the maps that were presented to us, I think number 2 of the Western Maryland package did a pretty good job.
Yeah, Kate, if I can, I guess agree with Mary. I think we should certainly add Carroll County. I think Walter convinced me that last week that we should certainly add Carroll. And then I like the idea again of the tip of Montgomery County. I think there's a lot of community of interest with people living in that very, very rural area of Montgomery County. And of course, the question is, if we added parts of Howard County, would we need Montgomery County at all, the tip?
No, you can, because and you're only going to add, so again, we need 248,000 people. Carroll County has 172, so that leaves about 76,000 more. So you're going to find them either in Montgomery here, or you're going to find them in, Howard here. And it would be,
I would like to see it in Montgomery. That's my view. And I don't know what Kate thinks. Kate,
I agree with that, with taking it from Montgomery.
Okay.
Because again, Montgomery is so huge, you're going to have to take part of Montgomery out anyway. And
that's right. And Montgomery then will probably have 3 districts, two parts plus one full one, if you're going to keep Montgomery County whole.
But in a lot of ways, that's not a bad thing, because there are a number of communities that sit right on the Montgomery County, PG County line the Tacoma Park, College Park, Silver Spring area. And I think it is worth looking at whether those may be best combined in one or the other of places, but not split the way they are right now when we get there.
Okay. All right. Let me just ask procedurally how you like, there is the capacity on Zoom to do polls where we could actually do it that way. Otherwise, it's just the people who are speaking who I'd be following here, but I'm happy.
Well, I'm going to assume if I don't hear from folks, that means they concur.
Okay.
So please speak up if you think differently from what you're hearing.
And Kate, I'm assuming that again, we're still these are proposals at this point.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not etched in stone, because I'd like to see
absolutely.
how the
Yes.
rest of the map looks like. before
Yes,
we
thank
get
you,
to-
Judge Williams, for mentioning that. I mean, this is a starting point, the base map, because we still have the rest of the public hearings and we still have submissions coming from the public. So, my thought is, let's get this base map running. Public can hear it. They can view this. This is all taped. They can look or record it rather. They can look at it later. They can give their feedback on what they're hearing tonight. Ultimately, we will be drawing maps, and that's when round 3 comes into play, when the public will see what we have come up with. Again, we may adjust based on feedback when we're at the final stages, but we have to have a start. So if we can consider this as our base map, then we say, okay, this is like draft. This is a big draft, but it's because now you're going to see what happens when you do these things and what the give and take comes into play.
So this is a district that includes Carroll and then parts of Montgomery. I just wanted to put the municipalities up on the screen just to see if we were accidentally splitting one. And it looks like Laytonsville is fully contained within that district. Again, there's any number of ways we can do this, right? Whether you want to go up and down, this I think followed a little bit about some of the community of interest concerns that Walter Olson raised earlier. But this basically gets us almost to perfect, right? Only 161 people difference, and we can always add to that. So I'm going to click this as a district. And so now we've got one district basically done. So we can move sequentially, go from one to the next if you wanted to go do it that way, or we could move from the outside in. Moving the outside in does, like I said, it'll squeeze Baltimore down, because depending on how you respect the Eastern Shore, right, then you'll basically take out any room for Baltimore County to go east, and then everything will go south, and that's where you'll get some of the Anne Arundel splits or Howard and the like. But
I presented going, the west and the east, and yes, then the central part is next. Does anyone because I'm just thinking that's a big chunk with the east, but is there anyone who has a different preference?
No, I agree with you, Kate. I think we ought to go next to the Eastern Shore.
I was actually thinking we should go work from along that border, because you're already in Montgomery County, that's split and whatever. As you go, a good chunk of the Eastern Shore counties are going to be in one district. We know that already. So why not work in an area that we don't already know, and allows us to sort of meld it better in the, with the population. So work in the more heavily populated area right now.
All right, that's another.
Well, I'm going to speak in favor of jumping over to the Eastern Shore now. I spent some time with the state planning group looking at Senate districts, and the most complicated area is the central part, and you don't want to have to fix that, and then you find out you've ended up with an untenable area to the east. So I think making some of those decisions right now will at least show us where the hard problems are going to be.
Yeah,
I'm hearing 3 for the Eastern Shore, 1 for the middle. Anybody else want to have a say? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so we're going to do the Eastern Shore next. Professor, your help, please.
So what we'll do here is I will go all the way up to Hartford unless I hear otherwise from you all.
Could you stop at Cecil?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was kind of curious what would happen if you, I mean, I know there's some who are okay going across the bridge and the others who don't, but what would happen if you took Cecil out of that completely? That would entail going across the bridge, but I mean, how would that affect things?
So I did one which split Cecil, so you can just get a sense of like what that might look like. It's not all of Cecil, but so this is just an example. Here's one that splits Cecil, right? And so it goes and you pick up these counties down here. You of course can do it with Anne Arundel, something like this, where if you don't put in Cecil, right? So that's 100,000 people in Cecil. And then you'd add Anne Arundel plus some others. I think I have another one like that. Well, you can see what this would look like with Cecil. So yeah, there's a lot of options on this.
The particular options you've chosen there have brought in practically the densest part of Anne Arundel, that part of Anne Arundel County and that urban area around Annapolis is quite different than anything else you're going to see on the Eastern Shore. And
that's right. Yeah. And I'll just say,
serve to disenfranchise that urban area.
Well, so one of the interesting consequences that if you do use the bridge as the connector, since the bridge is so close to Annapolis, that then you'll almost certainly pick up, unless you do some kind of fancy stuff going up, here and splitting other counties, but that the Annapolis population is relatively close to the bridge. Again, if one were paying attention to that. I mean, I think it's still on the table whether you're going to add Calvert and St. Mary's to this Eastern Shore district. But again, it really depends on whether you want to respect the Chesapeake or not. So how do you want to, so let me just add, if at least this is there's a consensus on that part of the Eastern Shore, that is basically half of a district. And so now you have to find another 400,000 people, which could be all of Cecil, all of Hartford, and part of Baltimore, or some combination of Southern Maryland or Anne Arundel.
Is it fair to say that the idea of crossing the bay and picking up things like Calvert or St. Mary's, Kim spoke, I believe, favorably, and I thought that it was also worth looking at. But has it picked up any other support, or are we the only two who find any merit in that? Because otherwise, there's probably a consensus against, if not.
I'd be open to exploring it just because there is a historical precedent for it, dating back 60 years. So I'd definitely be open to exploring it.
So when you're exploring it, can you just elaborate a little bit more, Jonathan? Are you saying put St. Mary's and Calvert into that mix and let's take a look at that?
Whether it's just St. Mary's and Calvert, whether it's part of Anne Arundel. I mean, I don't have obviously I don't have the break, the populations right in front of me besides what's on the screen. So I wouldn't be against it if we did go that route, but I'm not opposed to going north as well. So that's what I mean by exploring it. It's one of those things where I kind of have to see it and how it affects all the rest of the map.
Okay.
So I can weigh in a little. I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, can we look at those two versions, one with Cecil included, one without Cecil, including Calvert and St. Mary's?
Yeah, and I basically did those.
I thought, yeah, maybe just pull them up again, please.
And so this one, just Anne Arundel. Here, you've got St. Mary's and Calvert, and then again, there's none of Hartford. You've got Cecil, and then this would go up to about here. So that's an example. right? And then there's the option of with Charles County as well, right? That's a gigantic district, right? And obviously Charles is often when you have these large districts, the three corners are going to be different. This does not include Anne Arundel, but this includes those three counties plus Cecil, parts of Cecil. And this is a value-based decision, right? Who do you think belongs with whom? And that there's reasonable arguments on all sides. I'll say this about what happens when you do some of these options, right? So once you shut off if Calvert and St. Mary's go with the Eastern Shore, then Charles will as I was saying before, will necessarily come up, and you will get about 600,000 people from Prince George's County who will be in with Charles, right? So then there would be a district that connects Prince George's and Charles. That'll be a significant, as we talk about packing and the like, that'll be significant Black population district, probably majority. And then you have to make a decision about where the remainder of Prince George's County would go. Does it go to Anne Arundel? Does it go to Montgomery? Right? And if it goes to Anne Arundel, then Anne Arundel will be split 3 times because, well, not necessarily, but likely it would be split 3 times unless you were to take the second Prince George's district and have it get part of Anne Arundel and part of Howard. So just as this district puts a roof on the plan, and this district puts a wall in the east, right? Whatever we do down here puts a floor at the bottom, and then is going to force some other county splits in the middle.
So if you wouldn't mind, just if we included Cecil, that map that you showed us earlier,
yeah,
does that take care of, that takes care of, that's perfect, isn't it?
No. That's still only 60% of a district. Remember, the Eastern Shore, you have to go, if you're going to go in the traditional direction that the existing plan does, even though it's gerrymandered, right? You'd go up here and then you have to take a slice of Baltimore County, and then so this is basically 93% of a district.
Okay.
And then you've got to get the additional 7% somewhere, right? You could, you're talking about 54,000 people. So a little slice of Baltimore, obviously could go in I think if you're going to commit to going all the way up to Hartford, it probably makes sense that you're not going to take 54,000 out of one of these counties. You'll take it out of Baltimore County.
But would you get it from northern Baltimore County?
Well, that's up to you all. You can do it northern. You can do just right down here. So I mean, just to show you what it would look like, right? If you do northern Baltimore County. Just so we're clear, look at this is the number I'm looking at until I get close to 0. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're really going. I'm just adding precincts. So it's something like that.
Wow.
Right, if you want to do northern Baltimore County. But don't get one thing that as we progress in doing maps like this, just so we're, as is true when you watch, say, election results on, election night, right? Geography doesn't mean people, right? So there are a lot of areas that it's going to seem like, oh, I'm taking a huge part of Baltimore County. No, you're taking exactly the same number of people in Baltimore County in this scenario as you would be if you were doing, this first scenario that we had, right? That's the same number of people. We just, instead of doing the break over here, we just did it going to the north.
Now, this way you have it now, is this pretty much what it is now?
No, because Hartford, and I can show you the existing congressional districts at the same time. So let me give a different, I'll make them yellow so you can see them sort of brightly. So you can see as it currently is, the Eastern Shore district goes up and around parts of Hartford. It leaves out parts of Hartford to then join in one of the, serpent-like districts here. So it's different. It's different than the existing district, but the general direction is the same, but that's just because the existing districts honor the Eastern Shore, right? So the existing district, if you just follow my hand here, right, goes up here, goes to northern, gets parts of northern Baltimore County, also gets part right around here as well. But then a whole separate district goes in southern Hartford into Baltimore City.
I'm inclined to look at what Kim and Jonathan, I think there was a third person who said, looking at the taking the southern part of the state with St. Mary's and parts of Charles and not including Cecil, perhaps taking a look at that again.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to take what's called a snapshot.
Okay.
And then, so if we ever want to go back to this, we can.
Oh, great! Thank you.
And so I will call this Eastern Shore plus Baltimore County. Yeah. All right. And so now we'll do, you want just Calvert, St. Mary's, and all of Cecil in this?
I didn't think Cecil could be included if you put Calvert, St. Mary's, and what you had on the Eastern Shore originally.
You can. No, you're going to have, if you're going to include Calvert and St. Mary's, and see, it's still here. Let me just show you. See, again, although this looks like a huge district, this is basically, even if you go all the way up to Cecil, it's only 60% of a district.
Okay.
So you gotta find, a substantial, over 300,000 people or thereabouts, right around 300,000 people who you're going to put in there. And so here, if we add this, then we add in St. Mary's and we add Calvert. Here's where we are, where we still need to find 100,000 people. So you can, if you were going to go in this direction, then you'd have to add 100,000 from some combination of these three counties that adjoin it. So you can go to Prince George, you can go to Anne Arundel, you can go to Charles.
Or you could go up more to take a chunk of Hartford County.
That's right. That you could do that as well. You could take 100,000 from Hartford if you want to go, say, the northern part of Hartford. That's another option.
I'd like to hear from folks what you think.
As you're discussing it, I'll show you what that might look like if you're interested, because I didn't actually do that as one example.
It looks to me like Southern Maryland is now taking the big hit, and as a constituency, when they're going to be divided up into possibly 3 or more districts now.
Well, but not the counties. I think one of the things that has been a theme throughout our discussions is that although Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's once were a trio that were always grouped together, that Charles County has changed so much that it now looks north. It has many more common interests with the Washington, D.C. area than it used to. So just, dividing the one county from the other two is not necessarily as much a division of a community of interest as it might have been in our, 20, 40 years ago.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, but there's also trappings of similarity, Walter. And again, I'm just opposed to crossing the bridge. I really am. And I think Southern Maryland historically has always been together, considered to be Southern Maryland. And I'd like to see them together, not broken up like that. And unless there's some reason why Hartford and Cecil and parts of Baltimore County, northern Baltimore County can't be added. I mean, I don't know, is there an objection to that? Is there a problem with that? If it is, you know, somebody can articulate it for me. Maybe I'm seeing it differently.
I don't think there's going to be enough people with what we had from Kent County down. If we put Cecil, Hartford, Baltimore County together, and Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary, I think you still are going to need more people.
Well, I think you don't need Southern Maryland if you have Cecil for sure, all of Hartford County, and then a smaller portion, probably less than 100,000 people from Baltimore County. But Cecil has no place else to go if it doesn't go with the Eastern Shore. It's just, it would be kind of left out hanging. And I look too at the more rural nature, particularly of Cecil County. All of these counties have barely 100,000 people, and most have lost population over the past census.
So you're suggesting, Mary, maybe northern Baltimore County, Hartford, Cecil, remove Calvert and St. Mary's?
I'm supporting what the judge said.
Yeah.
Not jumping across the bay.
Yeah. How does that sound?
I know there was a historic press that, you know, it did exist in the past, but a lot of other things existed in the past too, so.
But if we did it that way, would that potentially leave Baltimore being split between 3 congressional districts?
Baltimore County? Baltimore
Yes.
County?
I'm sorry, if you do it which way?
If we have Hartford, Cecil, everything except Calvert and St. Mary's included, Professor, is that, if we could take a look at that.
Well, I just want to make sure I understand. The way I had the map before where you had the incursion in Baltimore going down like that?
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, so then you'll
So we're looking at northern Baltimore County, Hartford, Cecil, get rid of the connection with Calvert and St. Mary's.
yeah.
That way you keep, I mean, as you can see, this is a million different ways to do this. We're trying to do it the way that makes the most sense, keeping in alignment with the executive order and also with the feedback we've been hearing, and we'll continue to hear from people.
Right, so this is what we did before.
And then all Cecil on down to.
Everything, yeah, this is all in there. And so this is basically a perfect district right here.
Okay.
Right? That is, so, and then the question is how much more is left in Baltimore County?
Right, how many more remaining now in Baltimore County?
Here, I'll just tell you. $772,000. So you can do one district there.
Wow. In Baltimore County,
it will mean there are 3 districts in Baltimore County. It just means that there'll be, you know, one full
more compact.
Sorry, what'd you say?
It would be more compact.
Well, you decide. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, one of the interesting things about Baltimore County is because Baltimore City's right in the middle, it'll, you know, by most measures of compactness, a U-shaped district like this doesn't look compact, but we understand the reason behind it, which is like, if you want to put a district in Baltimore County, then this is what it's going to look like, something like this. Because then we've got to shed 27,000 people from this potential district, and that'll go either to Howard or to Anne Arundel or to Baltimore City, frankly.
So again, I'm wondering now if you let Baltimore County have that whole district there that you circled there, where would Baltimore City get its additional numbers to become a full congressional district? Where would you get it from? I heard
It'd have to go through Anne Arundel County because there's no other place it can go.
And then that would split Anne Arundel into how many counties? I mean, how many districts again?
It depends, so here's what we're doing right now. We're honoring, the more we unsplit, and keep whole counties at the beginning, the more that we're going to end up having to split ones down here. But we can, we can go, this is the process. Why don't we go through an example map? We'll try to draw an entire map in the next, however long. And then you can see, well, that doesn't make sense because it leads to a split here or there.
I think some people in the comments need to see what the numbers and how things actually shake out.
Yeah. Okay, so should I create this district in Baltimore County?
Yes, please. So then we'll have 3 districts: the Western, the Eastern,
Yeah.
Baltimore County. Right?
So it doesn't look like I'm playing fast and loose here. What I'm going to do is I will, because this is 103% of a district, right? I've got to shed 27,000 people. I'll take it out of the South here on the theory that that's the natural place that Baltimore City would go in order to, right? Does everybody understand what I'm doing?
Yes.
I'm just going like this. That's, again, these are decisions with political consequences. And so I don't want to do it in,
Well, I'm sure we're going to get feedback from people. We're just trying to have the draft map, so we got something to work with.
All right.
again, and all I'm doing now is adding precincts. So that's good. So you see there's a little notch here, but that's the kind of thing we can resolve at the end. But this is only 193 people over a district. So I'll call this district 7. All right, so now progressing down, you want it. So then we could include all of Baltimore City as a district.
Okay.
Plus another, whatever it is, 150,000 people. So
250 or 150?
150, because Baltimore City is 589,579.
Right. Okay.
And so I'll just I'll start now. Again, I'm not calling up the racial statistics on this, right? This is so just to give you a sense, right? Baltimore City on its own is going to be roughly, so it's under 30% white, non-Hispanic white. It's 56% non-Hispanic Black. It is about 6%, 7% Hispanic, and 4% Asian or so. So just so we're clear about the composition of these districts. And so then I would assume that we'll take the remaining part of Baltimore County that was here, add that to Baltimore City, and then go into Anne Arundel. Now we can take 158,000 people from Anne Arundel just going south. We can also go into Howard. I assume you want me to just go like.
Why don't you just go south for the heck of it, just to see what you're talking about and where you have to get numbers, how far down you have to go, if you don't mind.
Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swing this district out in this direction. The reason is we have to have room for whatever happens in Howard to grow. I mean, unless we go up from Prince George's. So, and you don't want to get caught with the water. So, and this looks like a sort of nice road to go down right here. So that's basically a district right there.
Does anybody have concerns with that?
I'm going to put up, just so people can see literally like what is where. I'm just going to, if you want to toggle back to see we can zoom in, and see every, little piece of territory here. So you can see the areas.
Yeah, there's a lot of communities in Anne Arundel County that are being split with that.
Well, so when you say communities, do you mean, you don't mean municipalities, you mean just like, because that's another thing I can call up. Right, so Glen Burnie, depending on how you define it, its borders, right, is there. Lakeshore, we can.
Well, instead of taking from Pasadena, if you took over towards Elkridge and maybe some of Howard County at that point.
Well, that's obviously, so that means you would go take, this district would be Baltimore City, part of Baltimore County, part of Anne Arundel County, and then part of Howard County. And then we run into a challenge here, because then we got to figure out somewhere, where is this territory going to go?
Yeah.
And so it can join in with Montgomery, right? But this is where then the compactness is going to be a little bit challenging. So anyway, it's just something to think about as you do it. It's like where because you see how the decisions we're making by going in from the Eastern Shore and the Northwest then affect our options as we go south.
I have another idea. I know you're doing this and they're just all possible drafts, but what if Baltimore County split and took part of Baltimore City, as opposed to being the shape of the county going around? That's just a thought. I don't know what that looks like.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the suggestion. If the Baltimore County, you mean this split right here that goes into Hartford?
No, the
here,
the Baltimore County shaped like the horseshoe you made for the county to say it was one district. Could that potentially, I don't know what the numbers would look like if it split and went down the middle, like through Towson from the top where it says Baltimore. How much of Baltimore City would that take, and how far south would it have to be?
Well, you can do, so basically, so if you look at the districts, so this is one full district right now, this is another full district. We could divide it in half, right?
That was what I'm thinking, just to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
And how that would impact the districts and the numbers.
You're still gonna have to go into another county. Now you could have, if we did it like north-south, if you split Baltimore County and Baltimore City, because I think that's what you're saying, then you could have one district that goes west toward Howard, and you have one district that goes south toward Anne Arundel.
That was my thought. I mean, I'm just looking at it.
And so, but just to be clear, we're talking only about 100,000 people or so that are here. So, or maybe 100, but basically 100,000. So you don't need to take it from two counties. Right. And it really just depends on how unified you want the Baltimore County, district to be. In addition, how important it is to respect the city-county boundary here.
There's commonalities in many places. So I'm just, we share lines, students hop. There's all kinds of things that happen. And so I think it's worth looking at.
Let me do this. Let me put a snapshot here
as well. I think it gives us an option, something else to consider.
And just in terms of time, folks, tonight, I'm realizing we're at 7:30. Is it possible we try and hang in as much as we can to try and get draft maps of everything? Just so we'll have something out there, and then we can, let that percolate for ourselves, and also the public can comment on that. With that, does everybody have the time tonight to do that? That's what I'm asking. All right. I'm not hearing negative, so.
So I just want to make sure I understand the suggestion. were you saying split it like this, going through Baltimore City?
Yes.
All right, so now this is roughly what you could do. You know, we can decide how. One interesting problem here. I mean, this is contiguous by, you know, a bridge somewhere, but it's you know, separated by water over there. But here, but this is basically a district
The key
right here.
bridge, the key bridge connects it, but
Okay, so this is what it might look like if you wanted to split. Now, this still doesn't go into Howard though. This just goes into Anne Arundel, but it splits it north-south like you were suggesting.
So what you also have is the number 6. It's Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County. Is that right?
That's right.
I'm inclined to let Baltimore City. I'm more inclined to look at the other version that you just had, the previous version.
Mhm.
And I understand. I'm just remembering what people were saying about having 3 different counties and 4 different counties.
One thing to think about is, you know, once we have the districts down, we can rotate them. You know, if you want to rotate districts 90 degrees, that's pretty, you know, easy to do. But part of the question is, how much do you want the respect for political subdivision lines part of this to, how hard are you going to take that? Because as was just suggested, right, if you split Baltimore City, that's splitting a county, but then it opens up a whole, you know, world of possibilities.
well, if you could make it a snapshot, just as one of the ones like you did before, it would be nice for me to be able to see that later. And if
Yeah.
you want to go back to looking at the way you had it before, I'm fine. I just want to see how far does that go south? You know, what's included, what those communities look like, where are they? So this type of map does help me to see that because you have all the different communities there. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And, you know, like I said, we can, once we get toward we start doing the micro moves, right? We'll try to figure out what makes sense in terms of, if you were to split Baltimore City, what's the right way to do it? Because this was just a literally ink on a page kind of situation there.
All right. Should we move on to Howard County? Does that make sense next? Or is it better to go with the bigger ones like Montgomery?
Yeah, Montgomery and Southern Maryland are arguably more the edge of the board as far as the jigsaw puzzle, and in particular, well, I think Jonathan's suggestion of taking another look at Montgomery, we could probably get one settled there, but otherwise.
All right. Well, let's do Montgomery so we can.
Okay. As we do this, I just want people to understand so that to start worrying about leftovers is, I guess, the way to put it, which is that once so for example, if we do something in Montgomery County, right? If we have a full district inside Montgomery County, then part of it the remainder can go to Howard, right? But then you're going to have some district that's going to be kind of northwest to southeast, going from Howard to Anne Arundel. And that will then be you'll have a 3 split, Anne Arundel will be split 3 times. And so, just telling you that that's a consequence of this. I mean, so for example, if instead we start with Howard, then you might unify all of Howard and then put it with Anne Arundel or wherever. We'll start with Montgomery County. I'll build a district. Well, you can tell me where. I mean, there's an important question as to whether the remainder is in the north going to Howard, and whether we're going to respect this border between Montgomery County and Prince George's, which we've discussed before.
Let me just say this. Walter had a good suggestion that some of the larger counties may not be able to have its whole district, again, because it affects the smaller counties. I had a different view a couple of weeks ago, but it seems to me that all of the big counties are going to end up
split
being
some
in
type of
three.
way.
Yeah, being in three different, Prince George's will probably end up in 3 counties. Montgomery will probably end up in 3 counties, or 3 districts here.
Well, yes, but then the question is whether at least one district should be within it. So right now, the remainder of this is basically 1 1/4 districts. So we need to shave off 1/4 of this to either go which will go with Howard or Prince George's County.
This is where some of your examples that took together the PG Montgomery County area around College Park, Tacoma Park, Silver Spring could make sense.
And so we can do that, right? So if you want, but this, this is a significant decision here to add Silver Spring and Tacoma Park to Prince George's County. But also this is as we start thinking about the racial maps that I gave you, right? There is, the Latino community goes in this direction here. I mean, again, I'm just doing this. I don't know how much of the South you want here versus going up into the northern part here.
What are you moving from Prince George's into Montgomery?
Right now, Prince George, I haven't even touched Prince George's.
Okay, all right.
This is just Montgomery County. There's a little, you see, there's a little piece of a precinct all the way in here. I don't want to lose it. This is my world right now. There we go. So that's basically a district right there. Again, we can. So Silver Spring and Tacoma Park will be joined in with Prince George's County. Parts of Wheaton, Colesville, Calverton, Fairland, right? We can decide instead to go more like this. But then this will shut off, right? By joining it this way, this means the next district is going to go. Howard has no place to go except southeast or down into there. So
Anne Arundel or partly into Prince George's.
That's right. That's right. So
well, save that and maybe take a look at does it make sense to go from Howard down right now?
So now as we think about this, do you want Howard and almost all of the remainder of Anne Arundel together, minus about 100,000 people, we can form a district, right? So you have 331,000, you have 585. So that's, roughly 900,000 people. And you've got.
I think that's a good place to try because there's a lot of common industrial and border crossing. Fort Meade is a big employer that draws heavily from those 2 counties. They have a lot of defense industries also in those 2 regions.
All right, so like I said, so here we've got basically a full district. Actually, it's a little short for some reason. Oh, because we took out. I'm sorry, I said 585, but I forgot we took out some from Baltimore. So this is almost a complete district. It's down by 10,000 people. So we'd have to find 10,000 in either Calvert or this area, Prince George's, or frankly, we could do Montgomery and then push this over.
Could I speak up for Laurel? Laurel is at the intersection of Howard, Anne Arundel, and Prince George's, and is certainly a community of interest, even though some of the people live in North Laurel and in Howard County, and some in the Anne Arundel area right next to Laurel. So taking that bit from northern Prince George's County would enable Laurel to stay whole in that sense.
That may end up being too many people, but let's see. Well, so let me do this. we'll create this district, which is basically Howard and Anne Arundel. And then I will, let's just look to see whether we can get all of Laurel in there. I assume West Laurel also. Yeah, it's gonna be too many people.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's just, it's gonna end up splitting Laurel.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, but then this is again another, it depends on how much you want this area of Montgomery County to be joined with Prince George's, but you could take 10,000 people out of this area of Montgomery County and then just move this over. And then the split with the split of Montgomery County and that's going to be shared with Prince George's would be smaller.
Why don't you try that?
Okay. Well, so we can do this in like any number. I mean, basically, even that just does it right there. Those two precincts. So does that. So I don't know where.
The other place to, are there enough people if you extend south into Calvert County, the North Beach area and some of that?
Yeah, that's another option is if you just wanted to pick that up at the bottom.
At the bottom,
That's a good idea.
rather than split that northern
Right,
triangle
yeah.
anymore.
That makes more sense.
That's basically a district there. I think, and we've Chesapeake Beach, which is a municipality, we have not split. Just so we're clear what's on the screen, so you know what these different lines mean. If it's in light blue, that is an actual incorporated municipality. These other names that have, in gray, those are census designated places, which are not political subdivisions, in the same way, like per the executive order, but they are unincorporated areas that have some kind of, designation. So anyway, so yeah, we could go down and you can see one of the problems here is that the water blocks. If you add like this river over here, you end up adding everything around it, but we can deal with that later. So do you want to do it in the south here?
Yeah, why don't you do it that way? And then it's not so choppy up in Montgomery.
What are we doing? We breaking up Southern Maryland again?
No, this is, we're extending the Howard or Anne Arundel district a little bit more south. And it takes up a little bit of Calvert County, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit so we can get to the number and then not chop up the Laurel, North Laurel, West Laurel, Contera. Once there's too many people there. All right.
So here, now we don't have, now our choices are getting limited. So let's do that. Now that's 100, that's 1.5 districts right there. And so presumably you would want to,
We're working on Prince George's now, right, Professor?
Yeah, this is Prince George's. And look, I know quite a bit about Prince George's, and so how we do this. There's a lot of different ways to where you put this is usually not the way we think about Prince George's. I mean, maybe you would think about the DC, the border with DC as being a kind of way of doing it. But this right now is almost a perfect district. Let me try not to split Bowie there. So something like this, right, which takes the eastern Montgomery County area and then the northern part of Prince George's. Again, on the packing concerns, this district because it joins with places like Silver Spring and the like, this ends up being about 43% non-Hispanic Black, about 24% Hispanic, and it's about 7% Asian and about 20% white. But again, but you know, joining College Park and Bladensburg and these areas with Bowie, right? That's one option. The other is to split it kind of, you know, going east-west as opposed to north-south. But if you split it east-west, then this bottom district is going to come out and grab that part of Prince George's County.
Do people have preferences? Are you satisfied with what you're looking at and want to move on to going down to the lower part of Prince George's and seeing how Calvert come along?
Well, let me say this. I'm not wedded to this. I have to really study this.
Yeah.
Again, I've got to look at the minority population and that area that's shaded there, and it shouldn't be dominated by Montgomery County. So I've got to look at it.
Okay.
It's mostly just a Prince George's County district. This whole area here, you know, from here over is Prince George's County.
So it's majority Prince George's County.
Yeah.
In terms of population.
Yeah.
Can we freeze that and go down and look at how the rest of Prince George's would be picking up? And this is what the judge had recommended before, I believe, Judge. You let me know if I'm hearing things right. You want to have Prince George's with Charles County
and Southern Maryland.
So yeah, St. Mary's, I guess.
Yeah, Calvert.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to have too many people though.
No, I think we're actually done. Right. This is the remainder. That's it.
Okay. What's
so that's the
wow,
next
that's perfect.
District.
I can't believe that came out so close.
Well, that's because I was doing it when I was doing it. If you notice the way I was putting the deviations as we worked down, it was all, you know, less than 0.1%.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Great. So we have at this point basic draft maps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are things for us to ponder. They're not final. I'm seeing a lot of chat talking about the colors and, you know, the red means this, and they're just, please, for the public, ignore that part. That doesn't have anything to do with politics. It's just like, these are just colors for the coding of the map. So our task now is to let this percolate, as I said. We have another hearing. We hope to hear from the public during that period of time. But we also have to work on legislative maps, right? This is just like part one.
Yeah. And
So-
I'm sorry, go on. Who was that?
No, I was just going to say, with the help of the state planning office, we together just went in and did renumbering. And for those districts where the population met the current requirement, we just sort of renumbered districts. So we just put a start out there. We've shared it with you, Professor. Once you've taken a look, there is definitely some cleanup going on because we only spent about a day. But the fact that this map does not overly split the counties is a good thing, because we tried to do the same thing. Districts right now rarely cross county lines, the senatorial districts. So that the complaint people had of, you know, they're in the same senatorial district, but they're in two congressional districts. Some of that should start going away when the two are looked at together. So,
I can put your map up on the screen if people want to see
Sure,
that.
go
I
ahead.
loaded it.
okay.
But let me, since we're about to, so I just want to, if we're going to move off of this map, are we comfortable with where these things are right now? I mean, you know, just so as I look at this, right, here's the way I would describe it, right? So you have, obviously you've got an Eastern Shore and a Western Maryland district, plus you have full districts within Montgomery County and one full district within Baltimore County, right? Baltimore City is kept whole. Anne Arundel is split just by 2 districts, as is Calvert and as is Prince George's County, right? And so you have, you know, I mean, in terms of packing, and we could talk, and I can give you the racial composition numbers, right? This, both District 6, you can see the statistics. District 5 is actually about 55% Black. District 4 is about 43% percentages, and subtract from 100, you can see what the combined minority percentages are. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and almost another 4 majority minority districts. And you know, really, and so like District 2, one interesting question is whether this border would be something you would want to change if you saw that it was splitting the Latino population. But I think you can work with this, right, as a starting point. Like, you know, other considerations are whether you want this district to go into Baltimore County, or whether you wanted if you wanted to do this division that we had here between Howard and or actually we didn't end up doing that. You know, whether the split of Calvert you wanted to put somewhere else, right? So if you wanted to, for example, you could keep Calvert whole by, if you rotated these districts, and this is when I print this out and I give this to you all, if you push this up and you push the Howard district into Montgomery, then that would be one fewer county split, and then Montgomery would push over, and then this district would push down. Okay. All right. Should I call up the other plan?
Yes, and then I think we should think about wrapping it up for tonight. Unless you want to keep on going. I'm just mindful of everyone's time here.
Let me ask Commissioner Clausen, why is it that you have N on?
We just said new.
Oh, I
Because we did a renumbering starting from the west and ending up at the Eastern Shore. That was the guidance in the thing. But
And
there were a
what is
couple of
NA?
places.
What is
An
NA?
NA meant it's not, we had problems because some of the districts had either lost or gained. And in Baltimore City, the numbers actually drive them to lose a complete district. And so we had it got very complicated. So that part is not done. It's just a starting point of renumbering. And if it has an NA, that means there's a problem there because the number exceeds, the numbers don't match very well.
Okay.
The population numbers, that is. So it's a work in progress, but a start.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a district missing in Western Maryland. There ought to be one that mostly consists of Washington County. And
that's what happened, our numbering.
Oh.
Yeah. So we know we've got to fix, that had to be fixed. So as we were coming across.
Let me ask just again, procedurally, how you would like to deal with the Senate map. Do you want to work off of the existing lines?
We did try to preserve as much of the core of the existing districts that we could.
Yeah, well, as you can see, one of the challenges is you can usually do that for the first set of districts, but just for the same reasons that we were coming into, if you start doing that on the outside, then the ones in the middle, as I see here, and just so people are clear, the black districts are the existing Senate lines, and the yellow districts are the ones that Commissioner Clausen drew. So,
right. So for instance, 40 was a district that included some of Baltimore City, and that number, the number 40 was completely moved to another place.
Yeah, and that's inevitably what will
those are the
happen.
things.
Yeah.
Right. But in the cases where a existing Senate district line had population within 5% of the new requirement, we said, okay, for right now, it's a start. And for many of the existing district boundaries, they were within that tolerance without making many adjustments or any adjustments.
We might want to have a discussion, there isn't time tonight, but we should probably be looking at maps constructed on several principles, and I'm a little uncomfortable with giving too much of an edge to the existing districts. They have some good aspects. They have some aspects that I think have been criticized. So,
yes, that's why we were just really trying to take a look at around the edges. But they are constructed typically within an entire county.
That's a good principle.
Yeah. So it sounds like, based on what I'm hearing, that we want, of course, the public to respond to these base maps that we've had, and that would be good for the next round of hearings. We also will be looking at them, refining them, but perhaps the next step is to take a look at what's been presented here, so we can have the conversations of what the principles are that we want to establish with the on the Senate maps. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah.
Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
It's a bit confusing, Kate, because again, they're renumbered.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and I'm totally confused. And
Yeah,
so,
you know what? It's a little late in the hour today too. So I think we maybe start up with this and maybe just start from a full description, Mayor. You know, what was done. Let us percolate, as I said, with the congressional districts. I have to commend the commissioners for working together to come up with a base map for us to think about, for the public to respond to. We really do want to hear maybe redrawings of these base maps we would like to see maps from the public. We read everything that you send to us, and you certainly have an opportunity to testify at the next 3 hearings. And then we go to work with drawing the maps, and then you'll see what we've come up with.
But one thing I might add is that obviously we haven't been able to read the chat. There's a lot of chatter in the chat about, and so I know that gets saved.
Yes,
it particularly, you know, there's at least among those who are chatting, there wasn't consensus about, you know, whether to cross the Chesapeake or not. And so I just wanted to note that. So just that it's,
yeah, we'll take a
still
look
in everyone's mind. We can always undo the congressional map if there are comments like that, you know, to because it's easy to then move, you know, the districts back so that Hartford would be in with Baltimore County if necessary.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you.
One thing that
Go ahead,
would
Mayor.
help, Professor, if you could take a look at the governor's guidance and see if our numbering construct were what you think is in compliance.
I do. I think it is. And, you know, this is one of these things where the governor's direction is not totally clear. But I think, you know, going from the Northwest to the Southeast you've done that here. I mean, it would be silly, you know, if the numbering went east-west over the Chesapeake, right? So the way you've done it, I think makes a lot of sense.
All right. Thank you. All right. I like to thank Professor Priscilli. As I said, a good teacher makes complicated things easy to understand. So I appreciate that. And we have a teacher here with Cheryl. So she's probably going, yeah, that's right. So anyway, thank you to the commissioners for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to subsequent conversations. So with that, we are going to adjourn the meeting unless anyone has any Anything else to say? If not, okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your work.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night. What's left of it.